Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Surah Swaleh Show. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, the multi-talented Amanda Seales. Known for her sharp wit, unapologetic honesty, and dynamic career, Amanda has made waves as a comedian, actress, and activist. From her unforgettable role on Insecure, her insightful social commentary, she continues to use her voice to challenge the status quo and empower others. Today we'll dive into her journey, her latest projects, her career, and her thoughts on navigating fame and activism. So let's give a warm welcome to the incredible and talented Amanda Seales. So my first question is, in an industry where you're often pigeonholed to be in one category, how do you navigate being a comedian, an actress, an activist, a scholar? How do you do all these different things? And has anyone ever told you need to stick to one thing?
Yes. I think it's become a lot more acceptable and even interesting to be a multi-hyphenate. But when I was particularly pursuing music, in my early 20s, I was told just constantly, not even that I can't be other things. It was like, you can't rap and sing. Like you can't even do two different types of music in the music. And this is even after Lauryn Hill had broken down that barrier. So that was a very frustrating thing for me. I felt like I was always being limited by other people's limitations.
Yes. Yeah.
And then challenging that was looked at as me being full of myself or arrogant. Honestly, though, the way that I'm able to do all of those different things is, one, on a practical level, I really looked at each of those things as a craft as I pursued them. So I never treated them as a hobby. And I think that's a very important distinction between a dabbler and a multi-hyphenate. And I talk about that in my book, Small Doses. There's just a difference. You know, you can dabble in a bunch of different things because you just like a bunch of different things. But when you're a true multi-hyphenate, you pursue mastery in a number of things. And that requires you to respect each discipline as a craft. And then the other element is that all of them, for me, serve the same purpose, which is art as activism. So that also is a through line that keeps it more synergistic. You know, I don't have like, oh, I do comedy for this, I do my podcast for this, I do like they're all for the same goal in terms of my values.
Gotcha. And in personal growth, how has your personal experience and your background shaped your views on social justice, and has that evolved over time?
Well, I'm from Grenada. My mother is Grenadian, and Grenada itself is just a very politically charged island. We're also hilarious. So I feel like those two things were always a part of my DNA. And my mother was simply just a very anti-authoritarian person. I mean, she never believed in just because they're an adult, they're right. She never believed in just because they're white, they're right. She never followed the idea that just because they're a man, they should lead. So I was always shown this. It wasn't even like I was told this. It was just demonstrated for me. And so as I grew up in that environment and around people that also supported that, I just had so many, particularly Black women, that I was able to look at that were really independent, that were really steadfast, whether it's educators or family or like the mothers of my friends. And I think that really, and also to add to that, I grew up at a time where on TV, we saw just so many different examples of Black women, whether it's Living Single or Fresh Prince. Or Martin or Different World or Cosby Show. So I had such a plethora of influences that spoke to like my individuality as a Black woman. And I say that as the grounding force because you have to have that strength of, I don't even know if I want to use the word strength, but you have to have that fortifying foundation of identity to then be able to attach your identity to social justice and to disruption, because we are not in a society that supports that. So you need to be able to be anchored, because they're going to try and push you down.
I want to ask, is that what inspired you to do African American studies at university?
So honestly, when I went to university, I was an acting major in the Conservatory of Theater Arts and Film. And this was a
Oh.
very big deal, darling. And I was actually just reading a chapter about this from my upcoming book that I'm working on. So I read a draft of this last night on my Instagram, but I talked about what happened at the Conservatory, and I ended up being asked to leave on some bullshit. And then I appealed it, and they took it back a little bit and said, okay, well, we won't expel you, but we'll ask you to just take a year off. And during that year, I still came back to school to take my required courses. And I just got the opportunity to take these other courses that I never would have gotten to take, Black arts movement, the Black, the Black popular culture, the works of Morrison and Alice Walker. And I realized that I had been robbed of so much wealth of knowledge and insight and art of my people. And then I realized, well, I don't even want to stay in school, because if I'm not going to do this, then I'm not even interested. I don't want to go back to y'all's dusty conservatory. And I don't want to just get a degree to get a degree, because that's not interesting to me. And I had a professor who found out that I could create my own major. So I was able to create, they didn't have a Black Studies major at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was able to create a Black Studies major with a concentration in the visual and performing arts. So I could combine my creative lens, my creative interests with my cultural interests. And so that's what got me on that path.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that answer. That's amazing. Wow. You've got a very interesting life. I'm going to go on a topic that's a little bit heavy now. It's about mental health. And I want to just ask you, because I've watched you for many years now. I think the first time I actually saw you was when you were on CNN having like a debate about catcalling with Steve. And that's the first time I ever saw you. And you really stood your ground on that.
I get it. I lived there. No one's holding a gun to your head telling you have to live in New York City. First of all,
you know what's funny is that you as a man, what your problem is that you really should just be embracing and welcoming to the fact that women are saying, hey, we don't like this, not arguing why we shouldn't. If we say we don't like it and we are demonstrating that, then you should actually, as a man who is a man of honor and wrote a book about this, should be saying, well, let's discuss how we can make you all feel more comfortable, and how I, as a man who says that I have class, need to help and talk to my brothers
about it. It can be very
it.
daunting on your mental health. So I want to know how you cope with that.
So there's been a couple phases. When I was on The Real, that was when I went to my lowest, because it was happening from the inside and the outside. And the inside didn't consider it their responsibility to protect me. And I had specifically asked about that before I took the job, because I knew that it's not like I'm playing a character. I'm myself. So if I'm showing up as myself, I'm going to have a lot more arrows coming at me. And they said it was not their policy to remove negative comments or to make, statements of support, etc. And so that was the beginning. That really took me into a negative place. And I ended up having a whole nervous breakdown, and I was having suicidal ideation. But that was a buildup, that was a buildup of, I had went through a scenario where I was, there was libel committed against me because I was accused of lying about a Black man and sexual harassment. And I had never accused him of sexual harassing me, and I never lied about it. And this headline, this singular headline, ended up just going crazy. And it is incredibly heinous for someone to falsely accuse anyone, particularly a Black man, of anything that he has not done, considering that we have a world that puts a target on our brothers' backs. So that is not something I ever would do. I consider it to be a terrible, heinous crime to do that. So to be accused of that when I didn't do it, and then the repercussions where I got death threats, and it just was really a lot. And so that really took me to a low. But thankfully I had a really great therapist, and I was able to employ a number of different techniques. I started boxing. I was doing affirmations. I'm journaling. I took a step back from the internet. I I was able, thankfully, I was fortunate enough to have the funds to be able to go on a trip, you know, and get away.
Yes.
And be by myself in solitude. And that was also when I discovered how healing solitude is for me, which is different than, like, I know some people would be like, well, wouldn't you feel lonely? And it's like, well, no, solitude is you choosing to be alone.
Correct. Yes.
Versus being left alone. That's different.
Yes.
So that was one journey. But in the latest iteration, I mean, I went through 3 months of a public character assassination this year. And it was brought on by nothing other than me stating thank you to my fans for supporting me because the industry I'm in does not. And
what's wrong with saying that? There's nothing wrong with saying that. What was the problem with
that? There's only something wrong with saying that when people feel like you are a consistent victim. And that is something that people feel that they always accuse me of being a victim. However, I look at myself as a victor because when things come at me sideways, I seem to always find a way out of them, right? And when I'm telling these stories, people are taking them as me like placing blame on folks, when really what I'm doing is just laying out that these are the things that happened and this is the route that I took to get out of it. Yeah. And that's the subject of my new book, in Body Waving Through the Bullshit. It's really me talking about the different ways where shit was thrown at me and I found a way to, hey, you know, life. So it really can be a lot. I will say, though, that so many of the accusations that have been made about me over the years were things that I felt so ashamed of in terms of my personality, because there were things that I knew that I couldn't change. So when they would say, oh, her tone, she's self-centered, she is argumentative, et cetera, et cetera. And it would be like, I don't not see those things. I just don't see anything necessarily wrong with those things. I think they're framing them differently. You know, like, I think I'm argumentative. I think that I am unafraid of challenge. I don't think I have a tone. I think I'm direct.
Yes.
So it's perspective. And as I and my psychiatrist have continued to learn more about my autism diagnosis, it has been so revelatory for me because it removed the feeling that I need to be responsible for other people's misinterpretations of me. And when you have these other people making videos, et cetera, these are not people that give a damn about me. These are not people that care about people, which is why they put so much toxicity into the world in general. And the more I began to understand my autism and the way that I show up, and understanding that it's not behavioral, it's neurological. Yeah. It also helped me, and I think this is the biggest thing to answer your question, is dealing with the internet is a lot easier when you really take hold of dealing with the real life part of you and removing people from around you that aren't really true to you. And I would say the biggest thing is really learning to trust yourself and believe in your instincts. And that's taken a lot for me on a whole scale. I could do that artistically, but individually, I would feel like, well, maybe I'm being maybe I'm being not enough. And as I've come into this season, I've come to really connect with God and myself and trusting my purity. Like, I really am a pure soul, and I do come from that all the time. And why am I letting people who aren't convince me of otherwise?
Exactly. And, you know, you've actually just answered my next question, because my next question was going to be, how do you stay authentic in an industry where they want to change you? Because, you know, you're so natural. And I'm surprised, like, because when people start natural, they always down the line end up dyeing their hair blonde, straightening their hair, putting blue contacts, you know, being whitewashed. So how have you been I was going to say how you've been so authentic, but I think you kind of answered it as well in that way, but you can still answer it if you'd like to.
Interesting, because at one point my name was Amanda Diva. That was my name. And then when I turned around 31, I decided to change my name, and I was going to do like a rebrand, right? And I remember looking at like, well, what would my rebrand be? And at one point I was like, maybe I'm going to dye my hair blue. Maybe I'm going to put blue braids in. Like because Gaga was big at the time. And so the idea of a rebrand felt like I need to go big. and I remember having this moment where it was like, well, no, for you, Amanda, it's the opposite. It's how do you get closer to simple? And instead of going further away, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for me, it was like, oh, your rebrand is just going back to your government name. Amanda. Like, that's your rebrand.
And it works. It works.
And so that's really, and even right now, like, I'm getting locks next week because I'm tired of doing my hair.
I wish I had your hair.
I'm entering the Miss Seals phase. So we're growing up. And it's not like I am not an outward facing person. So I am. And I understand that in a capitalist world, like I am a brand, like I understand these things, but I also know what I mean to myself and what my work means for people, and that authenticity is the only way I want to live. So it works that it's great that other people want that.
Yes, you do.
But I would say that I am also like, I've never been interested in this industry though. I've always been interested in just making art. And it just was that this industry was the only way that I could do it that I knew of.
Okay.
So even at this point, I've been telling everybody I'm divesting from celebrity because I don't want to be a part of this industry anymore. I've been super duper fortunate to have made my mark in the traditional fashion by being on TV shows and, you know, having that credit.
Yes.
But for where I'm at right now, where I feel the world and the industry is at for that matter, I feel that I have been pulled and pushed, for what it's worth, into my independence. And I want nothing more from that industry, literally nothing.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. I want to ask a fun question now. If you could have dinner with any historical person from history, who would you select?
Harriet Tubman.
I knew you were going to say her. I knew you were going to say that.
I am obsessed with Harriet Tubman, okay? I am obsessed with Harriet Tubman because I really want to understand, like, because there are supernatural beings that have come across this land forever, right? Like Jesus was not the only supernatural being to exist. And I consider Harriet Tubman to be one of them, to be someone who was just gifted with abilities that a lot of us probably could not understand and that were never able to be properly recorded because of the times. But like, I want to know, because there has to be some mysticism in there. Like, how did you do this? You know? So yes, Harriet Tubman.
True.
And my runner-up is Malcolm X.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I think I'd say like maybe Rosa Parks, but no, Malcolm X, that's a good one. That's a good one. True. What's your long-term vision for yourself? Like, what
Vacation.
Other projects do you have coming up? Oh, okay. Okay.
That's my long-term vision for myself. Vacation.
Would you ever be like a lecturer or a professor at university? Have you ever thought about doing that? You know, you're not interested? No.
I don't want to be nobody's employee. I did it. I'm old.
No, you're not.
A soft life. I'm entering a soft life. I was dating somebody who's like, I want to get into politics. Like, and I was like, ooh,
no.
I'll come campaign, baby. But it ain't gonna be.
That.
To be honest, this is kind of what I was alluding to before, where what I see for myself is a simpler life and a stronger connection with my audience, where I am able to truly create what I want to create and go straight to them. I don't have to dibble and dabble with, the middleman. And I really worry about the future of America. I really, really genuinely worry about, where things are going in a rapid way. And I think people feel like it's going to be a lot slower than it is in terms of the shift. But as someone who does radio every day, you can listen to my radio show wherever you get your podcasts, called The Amanda Seals Show. I am forced by doing radio and having integrity to know what's going on, because I want to share it with my audience. And when you really keep track of what's going on in America, what's going on globally, you can't ignore the trend of fascism. You can't ignore the expansion of racism. It's so in your face. And I don't think enough people are connecting that we have been existing in a space where racism was more social than it was institutional in terms of the volume. Like people were, if you knew about institutional racism, you knew about it. But if you didn't, then you could pretend like you didn't know. Whereas we are entering a new phase where institutionalized racism is not only loud, it's acceptable. And they're not hiding it. They're pursuing it. So when you start to see the legality, you know, that's what a lot of people do not understand, is that racism was never legal in England. In America, it was the way. It was the law. It was apartheid. Like, it was not the same in England. They didn't have apartheid on the books in the same way.
Oh, I thought apartheid was only in South Africa. See, I don't know this much about that.
Jim Crow is apartheid. The Jim Crow laws of the South were apartheid. Yeah, South Africa modeled their apartheid system off of America. Yeah, they just used the Dutch word. But apartheid is the separation by race or by class or by gender, etc. But, you know, what's going on in Palestine is apartheid. Only certain people can walk on these roads. Only certain people can use these facilities. Only certain people have to abide by these laws. That's apartheid.
Now, before you go, I want to ask, how is your stand-up going? Because I know you're on tour and you've been doing a lot of gigs. So how's that going for you?
Honestly, the stand-up has been so good. I mean, I really didn't get the opportunity to perform last year because of some corporate BS, and I was blacklisted. So this year I got to come back on stage, and I was genuinely worried, like, am I still good at this? And I got to tell you, I am. I'm really good at this.
I never doubted you.
So thank you, darling. So it's been exciting to it's always good, no matter how old you get, to impress yourself. Like, that always feels great. So it's been dope to just reestablish that for myself, and to also in the process work out my one-woman show that I'm working on. So I'll be doing a one-woman show in November. And so I've been working on little bits and pieces of it. It's called What Would the Ancestors Say? And it really is something that I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm really starting to feel good about it. At first I was, kind of just feeling my way, but now I'm like, oh yeah, we're cooking.
Yeah. Who are your idols in comedy, like stand-up comedians? Who would you say, like top three?
Top three. Well, when I will say that in terms of like who shaped my stand-up, Paul Mooney, Dave Chappelle, and Chris. And I say that in very specific ways. So Paul Mooney, in the fact that his commitment to political commentary, to Black advocacy, and then to just absurdism, like putting those three things together, very much how my brain works. Dave Chappelle has a gift of, whenever you think you've done as much as you can with the joke, then he'll take it to this other place that you didn't even think to go. So like when I'm crafting a joke, I learned that from Dave. Like, I will think like, okay, I reached the limit. And then it's like, no, you haven't. Where you go that makes no sense, but that you can make sense of. And then with Chris, I learned from Chris that you always have to sell the joke. It doesn't matter how big you are, how rich you are. It doesn't matter how successful, how many people are in the crowd. Like, you can never get lazy. You got to sell the joke. You got to perform the joke. And I think that's something that reminds you to have fun. So, and that's like a real special accomplishment.
That's brilliant. And last question, what would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, I would like my legacy to be that she was a real one.
Nice. That's a good one.
Let my epitaph read, here lies Amanda Seales, a real one.
Oh my gosh, I love you. Thank you so much, Amanda. This was a wonderful interview and I really enjoyed it, and I wish you the best of luck in everything, in your life and your journey and everything. Thank you so much. Thank you.